This is the Bema Podcast with Marty Solomon. I'm his co-host, Brent Billings. Today, I'm with Elle Grover Fricks and Reed Dent to revisit Matthew 4 with a Talmudic lens.
I would like to quote the transcript from episode 92 of Bema, which went like this at the end. Brent, eventually we'll tie everything back together, but, Marty, yes, we will. Brent, as the rabbis say, you got to go around the block to get to the next door neighbor. It's just been a couple year block. You know, one of those real big long ones. And now here we are.
I, of course, listened to episode 92.
Yeah, you have.
Which is, I'm guessing, dealing with similar subject matter.
Matthew 4,
I'm
yes.
surprised. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, and I've been informed by Brent, even though we record, obviously, ahead of time, that we've had a wonderful guest interview about the same chapter just before this episode. So it's a Matthew 4 extravaganza.
Yeah, and strangely, I think The Chosen didn't actually cover the temptation, so we didn't get it there. But yeah, now...
Wait, are you serious?
Now 3 times at least. Yeah,
the Chosen show did not do the temptation?
I mean, I think they're sticking more in John. And so they start with the wedding.
They bounce around a lot.
They do, but like that's their opening is they start with Cana and stuff. And also, who wants to depict Satan? Come on.
I wonder if they'll do it'll be like a future episode, and then it'll be like a flashback. Yeah.
Yeah, with the budget for CGI. Wind whipping around and cool stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, here we are, Matthew 4. Brent, would you mind kicking us off by reading that opening description for us from the text?
In the LEB, then Jesus was led up into the wilderness by the Spirit to be tempted by the devil. And after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, then he was hungry. And the tempter approached and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, order that these stones become bread." But he answered and said, "It is written, man will not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes out of the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the highest point of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will lift you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "On the other hand, it is written, you are not to put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "I will give to you all these things, if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Go away, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and began ministering to him.
So back in episode 92, the angle that you and Marty came at this with was very much talking about the actual tests, the actual things that the devil said to Jesus and how we need to know our text in case the devil misquotes scripture to us. And then also, as far as you've told me before we start recording, the guest interview also really connected with that material. And that's not quite what I'm going to be talking about today. We're going to be discussing kind of the really big picture stuff. And again, as always in this series, applying a Talmudic lens to see what was the conversation in the first century. What is the conversation around Satan, around tempting and testing that can help illuminate a new way of looking at these beloved stories. Not necessarily, of course, the only way or the right way or something, but a new, culturally informed, historic way. New for some of us, of course.
3 times talking about Matthew 4 on the podcast. 3 different things to take away from the story. 67 more to go if I understand how things are supposed to work about the text, right?
Oh, wow.
70 facets.
Wow, that's cool. Well, I mean, that works out for everybody who grows up in the mainline church calendar and has to do this text every Lent. So
True.
What a chore.
I have lots of feelings about the church calendar and the liturgy, but I'll leave that petty complaining to my friends who have to listen to me every week. Be like, why is it 36b? Why can't we read all of 36? Do you not think the whole thing is inspired? And they sigh with great forbearance. Whenever Reed and I are together on an ep, we like to start out humbling ourselves, talking about how insufferable we are. So there you go.
Oh, I've gotten over being insufferable since the last time we did an episode together.
Great. Keeping the theme going.
So it's fine. I'm fine now.
Great. Oh, okay. Darn. Just me then. Bummer.
No, I'm here to back you up, Elle.
Oh, thanks, Brent. Okay, so my first question off the top, I would love to hear from you fellows, is why does this happen? Why does Jesus need to be tempted or tested at all, right? Imagining, of course, that there is a whole plan to Jesus's time on earth, kind of a wild conjecture, perhaps. But imagining that the narrator, that Matthew put this in this particular spot for a reason, et cetera, why is this here? Why did this happen? Why was this an important part of Jesus's journey?
Yeah, I guess after having gone through Matthew before and the Gospels before, like looking at Jesus going into Jerusalem to be killed, like he knew what he was getting into with that. Like I feel pretty confidently about that.
Yeah.
This, I don't know. Like, did he, what did he know getting into this? What was his thought process? What was the motivation?
That's a great question. Do you have any ideas for your own answer?
I'm just like, Jesus was led up into the wilderness by the Spirit. Okay. So that makes it seems like he didn't know what he was getting into. He's just following whatever the Spirit's leading is, and that's what he gets into.
Okay.
Did he know he was going to fast? Did he know?
He's just on a Spirit-led vibe. Who knows what's going on? Okay. I like that, actually. I like the uncertainty of it.
My assumption would have been, without like literally reading those words, that he would know exactly what he's getting into, but it seems like we're supposed to read that he doesn't know what he's getting into. He's being led by the Spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's a good point. It's in the text, Elle. Come on.
So they say.
So they have said. You have heard it said. It's in the text. What do you have, Reed?
Far be it from me to know the mind of God and why this had to, I don't know. But I when I think about what you were saying about Matthew and why would he place this here, I always have connected this, well, not always, but for a little while now, have connected this episode to the crucifixion, just textually. The language is being repeated. The repeated "if you are the Son of God" is something that precedes each of the devil's temptations here. And you also hear that it may even be, don't quote me on this, it may even be 3 times that you hear it in the account of the crucifixion, where the crowd says, "If you are the Son of God," and they're basically jeering at him to save himself. And I think about in Matthew the story where Jesus is talking to the disciples and he says that he's going to have to suffer. And Peter says, "I will never let this happen to you." And then Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." And so to me, it's somehow connected to suffering and whether the suffering has to happen or not, or the role of suffering. I kind of, my read on it has been, I feel like the temptation is in some way asking the question, like, is this going to happen right now and quickly and easily? Because, you know, when Satan says, you know, "I'll make you king over all the kingdoms of the earth," I think Christians would speak up and be like, "Well, that sounds great. Isn't that what we wanted?"
Right.
And if we think, but then, you know, we've at various times, I think, talked about the crucifixion as a kind of coronation of Jesus, a crowning.
Yeah.
And so the question in my mind is like, maybe the temptation is about what is the way in which the kingdom is going to come, or what is the way in which Jesus is going to sort of be crowned as the king? Is it going to be right now, just do this thing, do these tricks, and then boom, you're king? Or is it Jesus like, yes, I'm going to become king, but it's not going to be that way. It's going to require this kind of this suffering, this hardship, this difficulty and pain. That's kind of how I've read it, just because of those couple of connections thematically and language-wise.
Yeah, I love that. I love that from the literary perspective of like at the end and at the beginning of his ministry. I love a parallelism. And then you put Peter in the middle of that. That's good stuff. I also just on a Peshat level, love the fact that the internal wrestling of Jesus is best done before he gets into ministry. Right? And for folks in ministry, a lot of our experiences like you pop out of seminary and then you pop into a job and you are wrestling with all this stuff, but you haven't done any of it yet. And there's some wisdom in taking the time to really drill into calling and drill into identity and rootedness before, or working through your pain, whatever you've got going on, before you try to go out and, do the incredible work that, of course, Jesus was going to do.
Can you imagine if like every minister, every pastor, priest had to do a 40-day long solitude wilderness retreat before they could?
That would be dope.
Yeah. I love that.
Sign me up. There was a Gallup poll research on people's trust in the clergy because, along with a couple other occupations, it's one of the ones over the past 50 years that social trust has totally tanked in clergy. And in fact, for those who don't hold a college degree, trust in clergy is only 30%.
For those who don't hold a college degree. Yes. Okay. That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, among people who don't hold a college degree, they do not trust.
No. Amongst the general public, when they're given like, hey, here's a member of the clergy, here's their resume, if they don't have a college degree, the trust of the public in that person tends to be 30%. So yeah, let's institute a 40-day, 40-night Vision Quest connection with God thing. What that actually ties over beautifully to what I want to talk about. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so the word for test, Marty talked about this a bit in episode 92 because the lens that Marty and Brent took at that time, which is wonderful, talks about the Spirit coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. So very important to me that no time that we ever revisit something is it ever like a correction. Let's fix this. Let's do it better. It's not about that. It's about let's revisit it and find more food in it.
I would push back on that. I hope we do it better. Like,
okay,
we're gonna take the foundation that we've laid and we're gonna climb to higher heights. Not Tower of Babel heights. Don't worry. We're not trying to get up there, but we do want to be better. Like, hopefully we're improving. Hopefully we're getting better over time. So it's okay if it's better.
Okay. Well, I'll leave that safely in your hands, in the hands of listeners, rather than being like, watch me go.
Okay. I appreciate your grace, but I'm also not opposed to the idea of improving upon what we've done before. So it's all good.
May we all embody your humility, Brent. That sounded trite, but I actually meant it. Okay, so etymologically, the word for test is nisa, comes from nasa, spelled differently than the lift NASA, by the way. I see Reed's thinking face over the Zoom. It's with a samech instead of a sin. Okay, so we see it in Genesis 22 with the Akedah story, the sacrifice of Isaac. And the important thing about Anisa is it is a test, but it's more of a smell check than an academic thing. Academically,
that's quite...
You're welcome for that image.
I like that as an image. Like, I'm just sniffing.
Yeah. But academically, we have this framing of like pass fail, right? That's the reason you take a test, to prove something to the tester that you've learned something at the end of a journey, right? But with the perspective of a sniff check, why might you smell your food specifically here? Why might you smell your food before it's eaten?
Well, especially if it's bread, you got to check for mold.
Okay, good.
I mean, that was my thought. Like, if it's rotten, the smell will tell you.
Right. Is it poison or is it good food for God's people to eat? The other reason that you might do so is to evaluate what ingredients are in there, right? If you're like, little snickerdoodle, what kind of spice do we have going on here? Oh, we've got cinnamon, we've got cloves. I love both of those things. It's part of the enjoyment of the food, right?
I wish I had that power, by the way. My smell and taste are like, if I had to do one of those, pick out what's in this.
Yeah.
No way. I'm like, well, it tastes good or I don't like it, but
This is a skill that you can build with time, Reed. I believe in you.
Yeah, just for the record, I'm with Reed. I have no idea what's going on with food.
Wow. Okay. What I've learned today, Reed describes his memory, or maybe that was me. I don't remember. One of us described Reed's memory as a colander. And now you're also telling me you have no sense of smell or taste.
Well, no, I have a sense of smell. I can't tell you, if that's parsley. Does parsley even taste like anything? Or like whatever the thing. I just in the food. Like if I smell, I can't tell you what the ingredients are. And there are people who definitely can. It's like, but I wonder, this is such a ridiculous conversation.
So you're like a raccoon when God says, take of the good food and eat, come seek out the richness, seek the Lord when he might be found. You're like, trash? Is that
I'll take
good?
the scraps from the table. I will take the scraps
Okay, way to make it a holiness thing.
Thank you very much.
I'm exactly with Reed in both smell, specifically of food, and in memory.
Back on the train tracks. We've got this. Okay, so if God's not giving us an LSAT test, if he's instead saying, are you good food for my people or are you poison? He's also figuring out what are the ingredients here. Of course, God's already omniscient and everything, but there's also a thing for us as well, right? It's an advantage to know your own ingredients. It's an advantage to know your own giftings, but also where you're likely to trip and stumble, right? It's good to be like, oh, maybe me and alcohol aren't a good match. And so I'm going to stay in a spiritual practice of sobriety. Or maybe it could be, boy, I really love applause and people pleasing. And so therefore, before I start a particular task or whatever, I'm going to check in with the Lord and ask myself, why am I doing the thing I'm about to do, right? So it's good to know our ingredients.
I love that you bring that point up, by the way. Sorry, just to cut in, because I think sometimes when we think about God administering a test, it can feel very sort of authoritarian or top down. And I love that you bring out the point that it is also for our own benefit to get to know who we are, because I totally agree that there are things we have ingredients that we're just not aware of, in the same way that I can't smell out what's in the food. I don't even always know what's like within myself. So I really love that sort of let's learn alongside, or let's discover alongside one another. And I think that's what good teachers do anyway. So
right. Hopefully, if you get a test back and there's a section that you didn't do well on, you don't just experience like overriding shame and shove it into your backpack and never look at it again. Hopefully you go like, oh, I need to go reteach myself this because I didn't do so well.
And some of my best teachers were people who used even the test results itself as a further teaching opportunity.
Right. Right.
Not just like, well, sorry, you failed. I guess you're out of the class now.
I guess you're bad as a person.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So the word Nisa is also used in the Arabic, actually. So sister language to Hebrew. It's the word for a touchstone, which is the piece of slate that you can rub your gold or your alloy on to see what the ingredients are. So it's a physical picture within this word, along with smelling your food, which also isn't really a pass-fail. It's a discovery together. And then if you're doing metalworking, then you might notice like, oh, we've still got some of this going on. Time to go back to the anvil, back to the kiln, whatever. Blacksmithing words. I've only done it once and I don't remember all of the things. Oops.
Well, that's That's probably a lot more blacksmithing than most people have done.
George and I blacksmithed our, that's not the verb, but I'll go with it. George and I, my husband, blacksmithed our wedding rings together. It was very fun.
That's pretty cool. That's really cool.
Thank you. So back to the Talmud. Rabbinically, they said that it was good to be tested in order not just to know yourself, but to get credibility for the work you're about to do. So there's something to the fact that if you're a Nepo baby, for instance, people are going to ask questions about like, well, did you really earn the spot that you have? Or like, did your dad just give you a promotion, right? And so testing, therefore, from the divine perspective, according to Talmud, they put it this way. They say, when a flax merchant beats his flax, he does not strike it too hard because it may fall apart. But when his flax is good, he strikes it hard because it makes it more and more beautiful. So if we want to be used by kingdom, we want to partner with God, we can expect temptation, but we also need to allow it to make us more beautiful and more better and a more complete vessel, right?
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
When you talk about credibility and it's establishing credibility, I totally agree with that. What I think is interesting is the first place my mind went was the baptism happens right before this in Matthew's account. And that is where the people hear the voice, "This is my beloved son with whom I am well pleased." So it seems like maybe it's a little reversed almost here, like if we're thinking about test as establishing credibility. And yet it's interesting too, because it's actually this insertion you have. He comes up out of the water and then he immediately goes to the wilderness. And then after that, his ministry actually begins when he starts preaching repent. So I don't know. It's an interesting order of events there.
Well, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but you brought it up. In that story, you said a voice comes from heaven. When you read Talmudic literature, that is a relatively frequent thing that happens. It's called bat kol, which, as I'm sure both of you know, is the word daughter of a voice.
I was going to get there.
Stole your glory. Daughter of a voice, so like an echo. And in Talmudic literature, a voice from heaven will like solve disputes sometimes. If one group is like, no, we should pray 3 times a day, and the other group is like, no, we need to do 4. Sometimes a voice from heaven will be like, you guys, it's 3. And so while obviously it's still a big deal that God did that he spoke over Jesus and said, "This is my son," although the text doesn't say whether everyone heard it or just Jesus did, I believe. I could be thinking of the wrong gospel account.
No, it just says a voice out of the heavens saying. So I think it's unclear.
There you go. There's some ambiguity there, but they would have been like, "Oh, dang, cool," but not like thunderous. This has never happened before. What is going on? God has been silent for 300 years. That was the idea, that a bat kol isn't as cool as a prophecy, but it does like guide you through. It's not the wholeness of a prophecy. It's kind of like a dream, but a little bit stronger.
Okay. Yeah, just a little aside. It make me think of the
totally, or group them together, right, and say it's all about credibility. But I've got another layer. I think
that's the thing.
That's the thing. Both and always. Second layer here, though, is the word nisa or nasa looks just like the word nas. And scholars maintain that they have different roots because the word nas is the word for banner, as in one of the names of God, like in Exodus 17. The rabbis did not see those as different roots. That's all conjecture that the word for banner is from nun samech samech instead of nun samech hey. They don't have a lot of actual evidence. They're just like, those have got to be different. So what potentially could be the connection between being tempted and a banner? Any hot take ideas?
When I think of banner, I think of like it being sort of an identity marker that you're standing underneath.
Yes.
And
excellent.
So maybe maybe the idea is that it is a test to see like which if you stand under this banner or not.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Whom shall you serve? That's good. That's good stuff.
I'm thinking like a banner as more of an advertisement sort of thing. Like you're trying to go one way and then you see this thing over there and you're like, oh, should I pay attention to that instead? Is that what I need in my life to find fulfillment?
Ooh. Fascinating.
Tell us the answer.
I like those stakes. But a answer, Talmudically, they say that when we triumph over temptation, God exalts us like the banner of a ship. Now, if you're a good American, you say, well, we shouldn't want to be exalted. But here's the cool thing. The point of a banner is not itself, right? We're heralding the coming of a different kind of power over the horizon. If you're at sea and you see a flag start to come up over the horizon because the earth is round, breaking news, that means that it's attached to a vessel, which is a representative of a kingdom. Maybe it's a 44-gun frigate. Maybe it's a 12-gun brigantine. But something is coming. A different power, a different kingdom is coming over the horizon. So why does he have to be tempted? Jesus is proving his mettle, right? The touchstone. He's adding to his credibility, just like Moshe is concerned about his credibility before he starts to lead people. It is an actual thing. You do need buy-in from folks that you're trying to lead. It will not go well if they don't have buy-in about you. But he shows himself to be good food and not poison. But also, he is heralding the coming of a new kingdom and a divine power over the edge of the horizon.
That's good. I like that. That's a good answer. That's a good A answer.
Excellent. Thanks for letting me pass your test, Reed.
I also didn't know you were a Navy nerd.
Oh, not modern. Just, the stuff that doesn't matter anymore.
A Renaissance Navy nerd.
Hence nerd.
We'll just dial in on the nerd part.
Yeah.
It falls under the purview of history. I'm into it.
Checks out.
Yes. Also, when I was dating George, I had to go to an advisor meeting or whatever because we were still in college. And I left him with Hangman, the game, and the word was frigate, and he only had an I. And when I came out of my meeting, 15 minutes later, he looked at me and blinked and said, frigate. What? How did you do that? I cycled through all the words. It's very simple. Okay. Just a little George nugget. Okay. Number 2, much more important, good to figure out in general. Why the devil? Why is he here? What's the deal with him in general? But also, why is he at Jesus's testing? What is going on? Somebody tell me.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I was
Okay,
just
cool.
so I was thinking of where does the devil, or can I say Satan? Am I allowed to say that? Where does Satan appear?
Yep.
In the text, and my first thought is Job.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
There's a lot of Satan in the beginning of Job.
Yes.
I have been told before that Satan is like a lawyerly kind of term. It's an accuser or a prosecutor or something like that.
Yes.
But then I think about instances in Gospels or in Acts or and he seems like a more adversarial to God kind of role. He's tricking people, he's snatching seeds, he's there's this dichotomy set up between the power of Satan and the power of God. And so
yeah,
but I think it's like Satan is final boss, it's kind of how so why do you have the final boss at the beginning, which is maybe a silly way to think about it, but that was a question that came up and maybe it's related to crucifixion like we said before. But I don't know why I is it like a foreshadowing? I think I've heard that before too, of we know that Jesus is going to come out the victor from the beginning because he resisted the the temptations of the devil.
Right. Proto-evangelion.
Yes, like that. I don't know.
I'm hearing you also wrestle with the sliding scale of dualism, right?
Yes, so I mean, totally, right? And I don't actually like think that Satan is like an equal opposite force of God or something like that. But there is a contrast between the power of darkness or the power of Satan and God elsewhere in the scripture. And so it is like one of those, philosophically, we know that like God is obviously not equal to anything else. And so,
right.
And evil and it's not really a thing, all that kind of philosophical stuff. And yet in the story, it seems like more straightforward. Like if I read it to my kids, they would be like, Satan is the bad guy and Jesus has to be stronger than Satan or something like that.
Yes. The Bible, in my experience, tends to be profoundly uninterested in our like philosophical dilemmas.
Right.
About being like, well, you can't say that because dualism is just like, look,
it's right there in the Bible. It says it anyway.
And then God changed his mind and we all fall down on the floor and writhe for a while. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Totally. Okay, Brent, any thoughts? Who is Satan? What's the deal with them? Why is he at Jesus' testing?
Yeah, I was thinking, the Job connection. It's like, well, Jesus is like a new Moses, new Elijah, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he's supposed to be a new Job, but it's like Job didn't really, maybe I'm making a bad assumption and I need to double check the text, but Job didn't really have anything to do with it. It's not like he was tested, but he wasn't tempted.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's really as good of a fit. So yeah, I don't know. I'm at a loss.
I think he was tempted. I think he was tempted to curse God and die.
Well, yeah, there is that.
Isn't that, sorry, not to be that guy, but isn't that his wife in the text who is tempting him to do that?
It is, but it's very Edenic, right? Because she's only a reversal. But she's the one saying, hey, you should do this. And he has to be a better Adam and say, nah, fam.
But I see what Brent is saying, because in Job, the dialogue is entirely between God and Satan, not between Satan and Job.
Yes. Okay, this is good stuff. I love that it's swirling around our cauldron here that we're putting together. Always dangerous. Yeah.
Stirring
Thank
it.
you.
I'm stirring
Reed's
it.
Doing a stirring. So let's look at some tradition, some rabbinic tradition. So Satan's name, as many people know, isn't actually Satan. It has a definite article. It has a the before it, Hasatan in Hebrew, the accuser. His actual name has been supplied for us by rabbinic tradition, which is Samael, which people might be familiar with if they read a lot of like fantasy fiction. Somebody usually like
I've heard that before.
Throwing that in there. Sam in the text means sweet spice of God. If you follow the way that Sam is usually translated in the tabernacle section, it says when it's like how to gather the incense, it says get the samim, get the sweet spices together. Here's the whole like bio. Here's what's on the Pokemon card of Satan.
Is that a rare card? Is that valuable? If I have a Gem 10 mint. Okay.
I was kept and protected from the evil of trading card games, so I wouldn't know. But he was created on the first day of creation, which they know because Gen 1-2 says darkness, Hoshech, was over the face of the deep. And so if darkness pre-exists the rest of creation, he must have been made on the first day. He has 12 wings, which other angels only have 6. So he's a fancy boy. He used to ride around on a snake with the legs like a camel, which sounds awfully like a dragon to me. He dresses in rage and is cloaked in cruelty.
That is metal. That's what that is.
Right. I actually really like that because sometimes when you're angry, it feels like good to be angry, and having the reminder of like, no, that's actually what Satan wears. It's really helpful for me.
Sorry, and just to clarify, maybe I missed you said it. What is the source for these descriptions?
This is all rabbinic tradition. This is all Talmud stuff pulled into one bio card. Yes.
Okay.
Which, by the way, listening to the Psalms read, that exact same proverb that you like tattooed on your heart about not giving into rage, absolutely the same proverb that like marked my childhood as well. I actually quoted it to my sister one time and she did not appreciate it.
Wow. Hey, Zoom fist bump for that one. That's, man. Speaking of being insufferable, both of us.
Yeah. Okay. Back to Satan here, as we often say. Let's get back to Satan. When Adam was naming all of the creatures, the angel said, "Hey, Satan, if we don't come up with a plot against Adam so that he sins before his creator, then we will never overpower him." And so that instigated him kind of embodying his snake creature that he rides around. When he was cast from heaven, Samael held onto one of Michael's wings and pulled him down with him. And so in Talmudic literature, Michael is called the fugitive, which is pretty fun and Harrison Ford-esque. Isn't that the right movie? Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't kill my wife. I don't care.
In the tube.
Have you ever read, by the way, Milton read Paradise Lost? I wonder if he was reading this same material because it just sounds a lot like that.
There were a lot of British Jews around London at that time, so it's definitely possible that they hung out. So while Satan is the accuser, Michael is imagined to be the defender. So you've got like two sides of the legal battle running around.
Now, when he had the wing pulled, did he lose the wing or he still has the 6 wings?
No, he's still got his 6 wings. It's just that was what dragged him down to the earthly realm.
Okay.
Just one of them is a little sore for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Who among us hasn't been there? Satan pulls on your arm for a while, it gets sore. Okay, but Satan is a Hebrew word, and here in the text in Matthew, of course, is the Greek. And the word that we translate devil is the word diabolos. Do either of you two know anything about the etymology of diabolos?
I do not.
Nope. I was trying to actually think about it because sometimes it's like you say it, it's like, oh my gosh, if I'd thought about that for 2 seckets, I would have realized that.
Yes, and indeed that might happen today. So dia means a cross, and bolos, like the weapon, means to throw. So that's where we get accuser from, right? He's hurling accusations across at you. What's delightful about that to me is that the word Hebrew, i.e. the primary identity of God's people throughout Tanakh, means to cross through. Like Abraham is the first one who gets called a Hebrew because he crossed through from Ur to the promised land, right? Or the Hebrews crossed through the sea in Exodus. And so they're Ivrit, they're the people who cross through. You could do a whole teaching series on that alone. But if we slide on our dualism scale all the way to the other side of like, what's God's relationship with the devil? I kind of love the mirror, the imperfect mirror of crossing over, thrown across. Because one of the first things, like right off the gangplank in creation, right, is you've got to take breaks. And when we don't do that, we don't Shabbat individually and societally. We get burnt out, we get sick. Happens to me all the time, get winded. And then you can't do anything at all, thereby effectuating your rest that you should have taken in the first place, right? So if you don't cross through how to navigate boundaries with yourself and others around rest, you will be thrown across by sickness and burnout into rest, right? So I love those things go together. We typically think of sickness, or the Psalms do anyway, as belonging to darkness and wholeness belonging to light. And yet if we don't rest, right, we'll be thrown across into rest in a way that we don't like if we would have just crossed through it on our own. So if you want a little pathway through the dualistic, a non-dualistic option, there's one for you.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Narrowing down our Talmudic literature and answering our research question, which is, of course, why is Satan part of this trying and tempting of God? He doesn't seem to be part of it in the trying and tempting of God's people in the book of Numbers, right? And at Mara and all these different places. There's no Satan imagery. So why is he here? Well, Satan in Talmudic literature does 3 things. The first thing that he does, this is our structure, we're going to hang out it for a bit. The first thing that he does is he tempts people to sin. checks out with Christian theology, right? Somewhat. In some Christian circles, a lot more than others.
Right. But generally, yes.
But generally, yes. If you were to come up with ex nihilo on your own, what does Satan do? That'd be on the list. Which you guys referenced when you talked about Job. In rabbinic literature, there's this guy named, a rabbi actually, named Polemo. And he used to start every day by saying, an arrow in the eye of Satan, which I love.
That's so tough. Just say it out loud.
Yeah.
I'm just picturing like going out to get the newspaper in the driveway and you're doing your bathrobe and the neighbor's there you're like, an arrow in the eye of Satan. And they're like, yeah, that's Bill.
Yeah. It's good. Who needs the Shema? That cuts right to the core of things.
That's tough. I mean, there are definitely like some older, like I can just picture like some grumpy old men who, just they're kind of crazy and they just say something like that. I love that.
Well,
I love that.
Count me a grumpy old man because I think it's fun. So there's this story about Satan confusing and tempting Polemo in the Talmud. And there's this point in this story when Satan's appeared all these different ways that Polemo is hiding on the toilet crying. True story. It's in the Talmud. Read it. Satan actually tells Polemo what Polemo should have said in order to get rid of Satan, which is like, does Satan feel bad for him? What's going on here?
Instead of an arrow in the eye of Satan?
That was a good start to the day. But when he's like appearing to him as a prostitute and all this stuff, he says, you should have told me, may the all-merciful rebuke Satan. The other frequent ways of getting rid of Satan include, but are not limited to, by saying God's divine name, Yahweh, or writing it down if you don't want to say it. Moshe, the baller that he is, when Hasatan is sent to kill him by God, by the way, Moshe's like,
wild story.
Yeah, the son of Amram, who was born circumcised? I don't think so. And he smacks him with a stick engraved with the name of God. To get rid of Satan, which works, but then God sends it back, and he's like, "No, really, you're supposed to die right now."
I'd like to request a new weapon for our D&D sessions.
Yeah. Oh boy, it's good stuff. Which actually, my theory, that's why Peter is like, "Who's out there walking on the water?" And he's like, "I'm gonna come visit you for a sec." Is he carrying like a stick and he's getting ready to do a smackdown? That's my idea. Okay.
Heck yeah.
So there's lots of strategies for getting rid of Satan. There's also stories, thinking about Jesus now, about Samael specifically tempting Abraham, like at the Akedah, the sacrifice of Isaac. Abraham's answer to all of Samael's points, because it very much looks like the story of Jesus's temptation, where Samael shows up and he's like, are you really going to off your own personal miracle? And then later he's like, are you really going to let all of your inheritance go to Ishmael? Are you sure? And Abraham's response to Samael in this conversation is always just, nevertheless, which makes me smile because it's terse. It's not a long theological answer to Satan, which I love, because sometimes when we get so intellectual and we have a thought, right? I'm not saying all like bad thoughts are satanic or whatever, but he just like dismisses it. No need to engage, no need to like write an essay.
Are you saying that it's not nevertheless followed by something different each time? It's just literally nevertheless.
Nevertheless. Yes, exactly.
I love
Which
that.
also makes me smile because Marty says nevertheless all the time. So he's channeling Abraham. Nevertheless.
I love that.
So Jesus engages with Hasatan here in this modality of his work, of Satan's work. He tempts people to sin. And so Jesus, in this modality of what Satan's up to, he triumphs over one of Satan's occupations. We too, empowered by the Holy Spirit, have the ability to turn away from temptation, right? 1 Corinthians, when we are tempted, he will provide a way out. But to me, this also answers the question of why Hasatan is introduced as the devil, which, again, to throw across, to hurl across, but the name switches to the tempter in the next sentence. If you look, he switches titles. And so Jesus, in my theory, is overcoming this manifestation of Satan in the Jewish conversation about what he does. So let's look at the other two things that Satan does and see if he also comes at those. That's what we're doing. The second thing that Satan does is he slanders and accuses people before God, mostly, but also man a little bit. So you guys brought up Job. Absolutely. That's the classic section where we're all like, whoa, this is the spiritual realm. This is what is the daily business. That's wild. But we also see it in Zechariah 3. I love that portion. I think it's more helpful than Job. But we also see this in Talmud, and this series is about opening up that Talmud perspective. Tractate Sanhedrin, which honestly has all the fun stuff. If anybody is reading Talmud for fun and wants to learn, go straight to Sanhedrin. It tells another story about the testing of Abraham, but from the previous chapter before the Akedah. In Genesis 21, Abraham has this big feast for Isaac's weaning. It's kind of his introduction to regular food, and everybody's partying and really excited. Satan says before God in this midrashic story, Lord of the world, this old man to whom you gave the fruit of the womb when he was 100 years old did not have a single bull or a single dove left to offer you from the meal he prepared. Which, good point. I never thought about that. He's not like, yay, he lived through the most dangerous part of a baby's life to live through. Let me sacrifice something to God. He just has a party. God replied, he did it only because of his son. But if I said to him, sacrifice your son before me, he would sacrifice him immediately. The very next story, therefore, is Genesis 22 with the sacrifice of Isaac. So it's a very Job-esque, but I do love that potential explanation for why we have this pivot and why something that seems like so horrifying and so out of nowhere shows up in the text. That's the midrashic explanation. So if his role is slandering and accusing people before God, it does have this legal undertone like it does in Job and Zechariah. In the Exodus, where Talmud said Satan bars the people of God's path and doesn't want to let them leave Egypt, he points out to God that God's people are idolaters, so have begun to follow the gods of Egypt. So this also shows up as a trope in Talmud, not just biblically. As his second thing that he does. How does Jesus in his work and his ministry on earth address these accusations of Satan wherever he goes, encountering people? What does he tell them?
What does he
don't think too hard. What does Jesus do when he meets someone?
Is it like a specific thing that he says to them?
Yeah, like any of the things Jesus says to people. He runs into someone, they're sick and sad, and Jesus says,
the first thing that comes to my mind is, do you want to be healed?
That does happen, yes. Good theology of healing there, Reed. That sounded really condescending. I'm sorry.
I'm a lesser thing. It's okay. I'm used to it.
No.
Okay. Is that not what you're looking for, though?
I'm looking for whenever he runs into people, generally they're often sick, right, in these stories recorded for us in the Gospels. And he tells them things like, your faith has made you well. He communicates forgiveness, though, is a big thing that upsets the church. They're not the church, but upsets the religious leaders because they say, only God can forgive. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. Jesus is taking the accusation of Satan, which manifests in a few ways. But one of them is the thing that's not even spoken verbally in the text, but Jesus peers into their spiritual realm, their heart, and gives them forgiveness on the road and says, go and sin no more. Your faith has made you well, or whatever version is in a particular story, because there are a little different twists on the general arc, but that's generally what happens. I would therefore posit that as he goes around, of course, those people are important. Of course, what he's teaching is important. But another facet of what he's doing is undoing or triumphing over the work of Satan in this dimension. So if Satan tempts people, he overcame temptation. Satan accuses people and tells them they're not worthy to be in relationship with God. In Zechariah, it's because Zechariah doesn't have the right clothes. Jesus overcomes that, tells people that they're forgiven, tells them they can be in relationship with God, that they do have access to eternal life, which is knowing God. John. Additionally, he also sends us the Paraclete, which of course is a legal entity, right? A helper, which is a legal advocate. And so he makes sure that that work continues on our behalf, even in his non-corporeal absence. Corporeal absence? That was double negative.
Yes, it is a corporeal absence. Check.
Check.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there. That tracks. I mean, it's kind of, when you're talking about the peering behind, looking at it, it's not stated in the text explicitly, but it tracks with other things I think that are stated in the text explicitly, because, gospel stories often are very explicit about here is a demon or a spirit or something that is being, like, Jesus is being set up as someone who is, we've talked about like the political ramifications of the gospels, and he is here to overcome the power of, whether it's Rome or whatever. But also there is this other corresponding power that is a spiritual thing.
Right.
And he's doing, it's not an either or, it's a both and.
And some of us are much more comfortable with talking about like the political aspect or whatever, because we are post-enlightenment folks, and the idea of spiritual reality at all is like, seems
For sure.
sketchy.
For sure.
I totally believe the Bible is infallible, except for the part where like angels show up.
Right.
We don't actually say that, but that's in there. Third and final thing, as we lean into this challenge, because we only get to experience like the excitement, the glory, the kavod of what Jesus is doing if we agree to believe that these powers are real, right? If you don't think they're real, then it's a giant shrug emoji of like, okay, cool, whatever. But if we're able to tap into believing that there might be more to our physical plane than just this chair and this mic and this laptop, then we get to experience some of the glory of what Jesus is doing. So, little invitation. But number 3 thing that Satan does, he brings death. Punishment for sin is death in Talmud, just as Paul alludes to in Romans. So whenever it says the angel of death in Tanakh, Talmud says that is Hasatan, that's Satan, that's the devil. Get ready for more metal imagery, because when he shows up as the angel of death, he appears full of eyes. Dope. With a drawn sword in his hand. And the sword has a single drop of poison on it, which he drops into the mouth of the dying person. And yeah, Samael says, according to Talmud, that he would prefer to rip God's people limb from limb to kill them. But because God honors the dignity of a person, he doesn't let Satan do that. But so there's lots of stories that I don't even have time to get into about the angel of death and like rules for avoiding him. But just a couple short ones here. If there's a plague, don't walk in the middle of the street, for the angel of death has been given the authority to walk freely. But if there's well-being in the city, do not linger in the margins of the streets, for there the angel of death is hidden in the shadows. Life advice.
So if people are partying, get out there and party with them. That's what I'm hearing. Like, don't stay home. Don't stay home in a darkened corner when we got parades going on in the streets.
That's right. Because the angel of death has been leashed. When dogs howl, it's the angel of death in the city, so beware. But if they bark, it's the spirit of Elijah, so it's okay. So good luck decoding dog sounds.
What happens when it just goes seamlessly from one into the other?
Both are
quick transition.
Yeah, dueling it out, I guess. Don't stand in front of an ox in a meadow, because Satan, the angel of death, rides between his horns sometimes for funsies, which also seems like solid life advice.
So I was going to say, that's just good life advice.
Yeah.
Even if Satan is not there between those horns, that thing could still do some damage.
Yeah. Either way, you might not die if Satan's not there, but it won't turn out well, potentially.
So, on the hiddenness of angels.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But like in the temptation, it's like, oh, throw yourself down, for it's written, he will command his angels concerning you. On their hands, they will lift you up. And it's like Jesus kind of sets that whole idea aside But then at the end, the devil left him, and behold, angels came and began ministering to him. So what? That seems weird. Also, I get the picture from that of like, oh, somebody's poking around in this house, and then like the devil comes home, and it's like, oh no, quick, hide in that hall closet. And they're like looking through the slats, and like you see him, and it's like, oh, is he going to find the angels hiding there? And then he leaves, and they're like, whew, and then they come out. Like what?
There's a lot there.
Like, are the angels peeking around a rock as this whole thing's going down? And one of them's like, oh, he just mentioned us. And he's like, no, shut up. It's not time yet.
I mean, there's a lot to that, right? Hebrews, New Testament people who are like, we're all supernatural stuff. Hebrews says that we ought to offer hospitality, for we never know when we're entertaining angels.
Yeah.
So like, we can lean into the discomfort of saying, oof, boy, what does it mean when I say that I believe the Bible's true?
Like, how wildernessy is this? Like, are there other people wandering around it, but actually they're angels in disguise?
I mean, maybe. Who?
Like, hey, what's that guy doing out there? He looks kind of sickly. He looks maybe hungry. It's like, we don't have time for that.
Could be an angel. I mean, a lot of like grim fairy tales go that way too, right? Of like, the two orphan children are in the woods, and an old woman comes up to them and they say, boo, go away, you're gross. Surprise! Right? It's someone of incredible power. And then she curses them to have like frogs come out of their mouth or whatever. So yeah, we should be more attuned to the spiritual reality that certainly is perfectly present in the text, that we are happier to skim over, because we're afraid of looking like idiots or insane.
We should link a poem. Josh actually passed this along to me a week or two ago over a text message. Poem by Billy Collins called "Questions About Angels."
Ooh.
It's really good. I'm not going to spoil it, but for those who are so inclined, it is worth the look up and read.
Nice. Speaking of spoilers, getting back to these rules of Satan here, he tempts and tries. Jesus overcomes that. He accuses. Jesus wipes that away by granting people forgiveness. He brings death. Of course, when we're recording this, Easter has just happened. So we know that Jesus also triumphs over this role of Satan. So therefore, as Reed said a couple of minutes ago, his whole ministry can be bookended here between starting off grappling with Satan and in the end defeating this role of Satan, and during his whole ministry dismantling and coming up against Satan's second role. One lens that we can look at the work of Jesus. At his death and resurrection, he defeats the third role, and when he comes again, the angel of death will be permanently dismissed, which is great. Cast away.
Yeah, I think this is especially good. I hope listeners are taking it to heart, and that it does cause some people to wrestle with these kinds of things, because I think that I could imagine a lot of Bema listeners probably being sort of like me, and the type that are like, I don't know. Okay, like shrug emoji,
skepticism,
like,
and cynicism.
lots of skepticism, lots of cynicism. And I think that this is really worth thinking about. This is a particularly challenging area, but I think the value in it, like what you said before, Elle, is that you can get a greater sense of the kavod, the glory, the greatness of what Jesus is in the Gospels, when it's not simply just like a political figure and like we're going to take that political regime and put this kingdom of God in here, but that there is this vaster dimension to it.
Right. Which Paul certainly backs up in Ephesians 6, right? Which is it's a freedom to be able to remember that we're battling spiritual realities rather than people, right? It frees us up not to just be like, that guy, this politician, that church denomination, that church leader, bad. It's like, no. There's an underlying spiritual reality that we are arming ourselves against, not people. We're supposed to love people, pray for our enemies and those who persecute us. So good stuff. Good wrestling matches to be had. But I've got a little bit more material. So here we go. 40 days and 40 nights. Good old Bema stuff. Why is he up there for 40 days and 40 nights? Why not? 30 days and 30 nights.
I mean, I do feel like the BEMA listeners would have a handle on this one. Although I'm wondering if I'm gonna say the typical answer, the expected answer, and then you're gonna be like, "Gotcha, surprise attack." It's a period of that's the period of testing. That's the period of in the biblical account in several different places.
That's right. Can you name a few of them?
Nope, I don't know any.
First mention, flood.
First mention is flood. Very good, Brent. Which, by the way, in the Hebrew is very dualistic. The flood is very anthropomorphized and personified as a being that has been awoken, by the way. So just throwing that in our dualistic non-post-enlightenment pot to stress out over. But I want to throw another one in here. Of course, it is the 40 days and 40 nights after the flood. It's also 40 years in the desert, which, of course, Marty brings that connection in episode 92. But it is also in Exodus 34. Moshe is getting the tablets of the law, the Torah, from God. And it says in the text that he's there for 40 days and 40 nights. And it also says that he ate no food and drank no water. So a little doubling. Genesis Rabbah rightfully asks the question, how was Moshe able to survive this? Which, relatable. And it answers that question with a when in Rome type of idea. So it says when Moshe ascended to the top of the peak, that's actually where angels and spiritual beings live. There's a line in Amos about this, but definitely a cultural thing about the spiritual plane is up, earthly plane is down, and high places are where intersections happen, which is why people are always trying to make altars and stuff at the high places. So when Moshe goes up, he ascends from our plane into God's plane, which means he became like them because one in Rome and didn't need food anymore.
That my first thought there was thinking about the comment from the Brent made earlier about the angels and ministering to him. So I thought you were going to say, oh, the angels were ministering to Moses, but you're saying he's being seen as becoming kind of like one of them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. The ministering to him has big Elijah energy to me. But so if that's the remez, what's the drosh, right? What's the point of the fun little facts? Because we're not just about fun little facts here, hopefully. Jesus is in this remez, Moshe atop the mountain. So when Jesus comes down the mountain, he is about to give out the law by walking out the law in a whole new way, right? He's also gifting us Torah through the lens of love that Jesus came to walk out for us.
And Matthew has, Jesus goes to give the Sermon on the Mount really shortly after this. And it's he goes up on the hill and he teaches them. And
precisely.
People have noted that you can divide the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew into 5 sections, 5 main kind of discourses No, that's not true. That's not true. It's the whole book of Matthew is kind of divided into 5 discourses of Jesus. Bible Project did a thing on this. It was really interesting.
Cool.
But anyway, the point is, yes, he comes out of this and then he gives them the Sermon on the Mount, which it feels like here's this big discourse I am now giving to you as a way to live.
Right. So really leaning into that Moshe mirroring.
So maybe this is why we don't have the Hebrew version of Matthew, because Matthew came down in Hebrew and then there was some sort of golden calf-esque thing and he broke it. And then when it was rewritten, it was in Greek.
Nice. I really like that.
We finally solved it.
I have faith that I choose to hold up like the arms of Moshe. My emunah is that we will find Matthew in Hebrew. Okay, that's actually a perfect transition, Reed. I just have one little thing about the rest of Matthew 4 to set us up for the Sermon on the Mount. Next week, I'm going to start cracking in the Beatitudes with the one and only Josh Basse and Brent. But I want to do a small little introduction portion. And as it's in Matthew 4, would you mind reading that section? There is an ellipses, skipped a little bit, but focusing on the calling of these Galilean disciples. Do you read that for us in the LEB, Brent?
Now, when he heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew into Galilee, and leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum by the sea, Now as he was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew, throwing a casting net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. And immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him.
Excellent. I want to zoom in on specifically what would have stood out to the original hearers of this story. Marty's done a great job talking about follow me and what that means rabbinically. We've talked some about the Galil region and what that means, that Jesus spends most of his time up there in Capernaum. So I want to mostly say what in here would have really popped out to those original listeners. With the fisherman part, I do think that that's a call over to Ezekiel. See, Ezekiel has this beautiful image of the kingdom, and I think Jesus is inviting them to that, where there's this like river proceeding outward, and it's full of every kind of fish, and there are people fishing, and the Talmudic conversation is about those fish being nations, and so this pure water makes every water it touches also pure, which is the opposite of how physics works. So I think that's the main context of what Jesus talks to them about. But I want to underline the cultural, historical stuff that would have accompanied people as soon as they hear the word Galil, as soon as they hear Galilee. What are they thinking? Because we might not have all of those illusions. But if we think in our context about, like Wash Tukna, if I heard that Jesus went to Wash Tukna and I'm from the Palouse, I would immediately have a lot of thoughts. And the rest of the country doesn't, because they don't know about Wash Tukna. So,
like me, I'm in Missouri. I don't know what that means.
Right. But I'm sure you could come up with a Missouri version of that. Oh, right. Jesus went there? Weird. Why would he go to St. Louis when he could go to KC? That's what I've heard.
I mean, that's facts.
Okay. I've only been to St. Louis. It's my misfortune. Okay, so folks in the Galilee, there's a lot of notes about them in Talmud. I know in the past, Marty has talked about it kind of being like the Harvard and Yale area with the triangle he talks about. And that's true that there's a lot of Pharisees up there. And there's a lot of rabbinic conversation coming up in this region. But there's also a lot of other ideas about Galileans. So here are some quotes. This first one is from Josephus. He says, the Galileans are continually addicted to innovation, inclined by nature to upheaval, and they rejoice and revolts, for they have been ready for battle since childhood.
Kind of sounds like Americans.
Interesting.
It also sounds good, I think. Like
question mark? Innovation, certainly good.
Yeah,
upheaval, maybe. Revolt.
Revolts. Yeah, maybe a little more fear, but like upheaval, like, hey, we're not afraid to, like, if we innovate and we find something better, we're not afraid to throw everything else out and move forward in the better way.
Sure. Very American of both of you.
Thank you.
To say that those are good things. Braita says it in different ways that they're quarrelsome. Talmud says they're more concerned with upholding their honor than sustaining their lives. Which, if I draw our minds over to Timothy, when we read requirements for leadership, not being quarrelsome and not being eager for a fight are like two big things in that letter. But
Galileans need not apply.
Yeah, right. There's
a
bajillion notes in Talmud complaining about Galileans and how specifically bad they are at speaking and distinguishing, folks who have studied Hebrew even a little bit, distinguishing between their aleph and their ayins and their chetz and their kafs. So there's lots of stories that go like, you foolish Galilean, you tried to ask for an omer, which is like a measurement. But we can't tell if you're saying you want a donkey or wine or wool or a sheep, because they're just so bad at talking with their dialect. But it's not just like, oh, they have an accent, they have a dialect, which is also historically definitely true when we look at the linguistics of the regions. But they had like negative things attached to that. It wasn't just, oh, they speak differently from this. They posited, Southerners posited it was because Galileans were more careless. That's why they were bad at talking. There's also lots of complaints about the ways they constantly messed up mitzvot, commandments, because Galileans couldn't tell the difference between X and Y because they just weren't paying attention, supposedly. So an example of that in the Talmud is, my father's house belonged to owners in Galilee. Why was it destroyed? The Galileans let trials having to do with money be decided by one individual, which the Talmud says, no. You've got to have, if money's involved, you've got to have multiple witnesses. So that's an example. Galileans aren't doing things right. They can't talk right. Why can't they? Because they just don't care. They're just lackadaisical.
They're like lunkheads. They're just,
fighting.
Yeah.
And then with that honor piece, it kind of has like, I don't know, 1800s Southerner energy of like a Southern gentleman with a sword being like, oh, you besmirched my honor, and like wanting to duel in the street. That's the Galilean, but also not being able to talk properly. Adding to that, this piece that I have never crossed my mind, never occurred to me. I've never seen this depicted. My mind was blown finding this in Talmud. You are not allowed to use nets in the Sea of Galilee. There is a law that says the lake belongs to all 10 tribes. But the rule is you can only fish with a rod or with pots or with thread. No trawling, nothing hurling, nothing woven, unless you happen to be born of the tribe of Naphtali. So there's this possibility. Now, I don't know. Lots of people conjecture about like, oh, each disciple is from a different tribe, or it seems like these folks are from this tribe. We don't actually know. There is a possibility that all these people are from the tribe of Naphtali, but it's also super possible that as Jesus walks up, Peter and Andrew and James and John are all like, okay, look, nobody's here. Do the nets. We need more fish. That they're totally being caught in what they're doing, which also makes the miracle in another gospel narrative like even better. That Jesus is like, hey, you know that net that you have from the bottom of your boat that you're totally not supposed to have, but I know about? Try putting it on the other side. So there's a subversiveness, there's a trying to get away with things, there's a rebellion, there's a little bit of desperateness in this story.
This feels like things that we've talked about concerning like Jacob, and that kind of that maybe morally flexible ingenuity. And I think Jesus, I wonder if maybe one of the reasons why Jesus calls them is because, I mean, you could attribute it as, oh, well, this is actually pretty smart and you're going to catch a lot of fish this way, even though it's not allowed by whatever these rules are. But I like the way you think. Come with me.
Yeah, I love it too. I think it does play into the rest of Tanakh, right? Of who does God tend to pick? It is the Jacobs. It is the people who are like, okay, here are the rules. A Talmudic rule, by the way, not a Torah rule.
Right.
And I'm going to set it aside just a little bit because I'm trying to feed my family here. So
is that language of Simon and Andrew throwing a casting net into the sea? Is that like, does that connect at all with like the throwing
satanic thing to do? That's a good connection, Brent. I'd have to look in the interlinear that I don't have open at the moment. But even if they're not throwing it actually or casting it, it's still something woven. So they're probably still not supposed to be doing it.
Is there a distinction between Simon and Andrew throwing the net, but James and John mending a net?
Hard to say. I mean, are they going to use the net in the Yarden instead of in the Galil or in the Gennesaret, rather, the Kinneret? Hard to say. I don't know. I just ran across this in the Talmud. I'm like, wait, hold on.
That's very interesting.
That is pretty crazy.
Nothing woven, huh? So to get introspective, to land this home and not just add another interesting fact to our roster, I want to ask the question, the invitation, the challenge. Who are we trying to be? Are we trying to be the people who get everything absolutely right? Whether that's the perspective on the word, the right cultural historical fact that blows the door off of a text, the way we live, our productivity routine, whatever it is. Are we really concerned with getting everything right? Because the people that Jesus tend to pick, the people all through Tanakh that God tends to call out and say, actually, it's you, they're not particularly good at getting it all right. These Galileans don't even speak Hebrew correctly, supposedly. Hebrew is their own actual language, and they're not even good at that. The call that Jesus puts out requires us to own that, right? He catches potentially the disciples doing something wrong, and they had to be willing to freely set aside their own shame that I am just XYZ. I'm just a Galilean. I don't speak properly. I'm always fighting with people. I'm secretly dropping my nets into the sea when I'm not supposed to be. I'm just from this backcountry state. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I just work in this undervalued job. I'm just a college student working multiple side jobs to try to pay for my housing. Or I'm just a retiree. Who's going to listen to me? Having the vulnerability to be like, the Messiah, the King of the universe, wants me to follow him, I'm all in. Even when he catches me doing something I'm not supposed to be, even when I am from the backwater. So are we spending more time working to shape ourselves into somebody who would get everything absolutely right and be flawless and check all of our boxes? Or are we spending our time molding ourselves into someone who hears a whisper from God, like Samuel with Ellie, and say, yes, I'm here. What is it that you want? I am ready to do it. I'm ready to cast aside everything. Nothing compares to what you're asking me to do. Do we spend more time cultivating that within ourselves, or do we spend more time cultivating rightness? And which one is God more interested in?
That's good. That's really good.
Hypothetically.
So you came and gave your testimony at CCF not that long ago, and this feels like some of what you were saying then. And I just feel like the people that I know, a lot of people who would benefit from thinking along these lines. Yeah, that's super good.
Yeah, not you, though. You never try to get things right, Enneagram 5.
I am a lesser thing. I know that I could never possibly, so I don't even aspire to it. No, for me, for sure, too, the Enneagram 5-ness, it needs to hear this. I love that idea that Jesus is calling the people who aren't getting everything. I mean, I think about in Acts 2, when it's like they saw that they were common, uneducated people, and they were astounded, but they could tell that they had been with Jesus. That was the thing. Right. And it's like, what are the marks of somebody where you can tell that they've been with Jesus? Mm-hmm. I wonder what they saw, you know?
Well, it tells us what they saw. A bunch of people overwhelmed with joy.
Yes, right.
Oh, no, we don't like that.
Yeah.
Joy? Gross. Be measured.
Give me education.
Yeah. Give me calmness, serenity, not joy, not getting it right, but being all in anyway.
Okay, well, I'm going to say that this podcast episode is full of joy.
Oh, good.
I think that's going to be our marker.
And Satan.
Oh, no.
I mean, yeah, there's,
Darn.
a bit of that too. But, yeah, I think we had a good time here.
An arrow in the eye of Satan.
An arrow in the eye of Satan, indeed. Okay, well, that does it for this episode. You can go to bamodasubship.com to find all of the things that we have going on there. Everything you need to know is on the website, and if it's not for some reason, you can use the contact page to get in touch. So thanks for joining us on the Bama Podcast. We'll talk to you again soon.